Hey, podcast listeners. Two quick things before we jump into this week's episode. First off, we are excited to announce that Can We Still Be Friends is now available in the iTunes Store. So if you prefer using iTunes for your podcasts, head on over to the podcast directory and subscribe. While you're there, take a moment to give us a stellar rating and review. Second, we had some technical hiccups during this recording, so some portions of this episode have an echo that some might find distracting. We do apologize in advance. During these sections, just imagine we're live in a huge theater with thousands of attentive fans. It's not that far-fetched, is it? Okay, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Can We Still Be Friends, a podcast that tests the limits of the friendship between two people who mistake movie taste for personal morality. Each episode is devoted to one piece of pop culture that we can't agree on. As a way of preserving the friendship and reaching common ground, Ryan and I revisit the work, hear each other out, and decide whether our friendship can survive. I'm Nate Gass.
And I'm Ryan Ebling. With the Oscars coming up on March 2nd, we've decided to depart a bit from our original format, even though this is only our second episode. And we're going to weigh in on who we think will win, who we think deserves to win, and along the way we'll talk about some snubs and some personal grievances that we have. Now for this episode, we brought a special guest, and I've written a very special introduction for him, so here goes. The words Evan Mather are thrown around a lot these days, but Nate and I believe that those words describe no one as well as they describe our guest, Evan Mather. Evan, welcome.
Thanks, guys. Really happy to be here.
Good to have you.
Evan's going to share his thoughts on this year's batch of Oscar contenders with us and perhaps turn our head-to-head debate into a screaming three-way in the spirit of Wolf of Wall Street.
Though, hopefully, unlike Wolf of Wall Street, will be interesting.
So it begins.
Second, please.
Please, Mr. Kennedy. I don't wanna go.
Don't shoot me in the outer space.
Oh, please, Mr. Kennedy. I don't wanna go.
Don't shoot me in the outer space.
I sweat when they stuff me in the pressure suits. Rubble, helmet, dashboard, and boots.
Hope you enjoyed the folk stylings of Justin Timberlake, Oscar Isaac, and Adam Driver singing Please, Mr. Kennedy, one of many great songs featured in the latest Coen Brothers picture Inside Llewyn Davis, a film not nominated for Best Picture. As Ryan mentioned earlier, we're changing up the format for this episode so we can give you our special take on the 86th Academy Awards, which will be broadcast Sunday, March 2nd on ABC. The Oscars can be one of the more contentious reward shows, but they do give us a framework for reflecting and arguing about all the films of 2013. We've decided to stick to four major categories: Best Actress, Best Actor, Best Director, and Best Picture, for discussing who we think will win and who we think should win. And we'll also be spending some time talking about the biggest snubs of the year. Ryan, what should we start off with?
All right, so let's start this one off with the movies that we thought should have been nominated. On our website, canwestillbefriends.net, we asked our listeners what they thought the biggest snub, the most egregious snub at this year's Oscars was. So, Nate, why don't you tell us what the results of that were? Remind us of their choices and tell us what the listeners thought.
On our website, we had a survey or a poll that you could go on and take, and the question was, what was this year's biggest Oscar nomination snub? And your choices were, for Best Picture, Inside Llewyn Davis; for Best Actor, Tom Hanks in his portrayal as Captain Phillips; for Best Actress, Oprah Winfrey for Lee Daniels' The Butler; Best Director, the Coen Brothers for Inside Llewyn Davis; Best Documentary, Blackfish; Best Actor, Robert Redford for his performance in All Is Lost; Best Animated Feature, Monsters University; and Best Actor, Joaquin Phoenix for his performance in the movie Her.
All right, and what were the results on that one?
A little surprising, actually. Yeah, do we need a drum roll here for this? Or
Yeah, sure. Can you add that? There you go.
that's why we have Evan here, really.
If you guys can believe it, that was not a recording of a drum roll. That was Evan doing that with his mouth.
Wow. Okay. So, anyways, what we didn't have a single vote for Oprah Winfrey, or surprisingly, we didn't have a single vote for the Coen Brothers
As director?
But we had maybe that's because anyone who was going to vote Best Director actually just cast their vote for Inside Llewyn Davis's Best Picture, which got 26% of the vote.
That's what I did too. I would have maybe voted for the Coen Brothers, but since I only had one choice, for me, Inside Llewyn Davis's Best Picture. And Evan, I think you're in the same boat.
Yeah, can you scoot over and make room in that boat for me?
Yep, just a sec.
Awesome.
There you go.
All right, we're
Thanks.
both in that boat. You guys are both in that boat.
We are both in that
okay.
boat.
It's a nice boat.
And then after Inside Llewyn Davis with the Best Picture for 26%, we had a tie actually with Best Documentary as Blackfish.
It tied with Inside Llewyn Davis?
It tied with Inside Llewyn Davis. So yeah, I guess we got a lot of documentary watchers out there, which is good.
Yeah, it sounds. Are you a little surprised by that?
I gotta say, I am a little surprised by that. First of all, I'm surprised that out of all of these, that was something that enough people had actually seen that it merited as much votes as some of these other ones, which were obviously mainstream theatrical releases.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Blackfish also though was aired on, I think it was CNN.
That's true.
Fairly recently, so
And
you
Netflix.
didn't actually.
It is on Netflix,
Streaming
which is
on
how I
Netflix.
caught up. That's
And
how I
there's
caught up.
a lot of word of mouth for that one.
Yeah.
Because it's shocking to see, and people kind of want to see shocking things that make them feel informed. And I like the documentary, but whether or not I think it should have been nominated, I think that's here nor there.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in the. I liked it too. I watched it, and it was a good documentary. I don't know that I would have considered it one of the biggest Oscar nominated nomination snubs.
Yeah, not. I mean, this year there was a lot of innovation in documentaries, and so from that standpoint, as good as Blackfish was, it was sort of run of the mill, just a typically well-made documentary. But I'm glad our listeners enjoyed it enough to like to see it nominated.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll say that it certainly was a documentary that it was a topic that I wasn't that familiar with. I don't think about SeaWorld all that often. and for those who don't know what Blackfish is, even, this is the documentary about SeaWorld, and specifically about some of their practices with how they capture and treat their killer whale. And they follow, in particular, Tilikum, one of the whales that has a history of violence, and talking about why that is.
Right. It's very, very interesting.
Did you catch that one, Evan?
I did not. I caught parts of it.
Okay.
And it seemed like, I think people really connected to that film because of the topic, and it really, was something they connected with. While what I look for, at least when I'm picking like my favorite documentaries of the year or what should be Oscar nominated, are things that really challenge the form of documentary. And I'm not sure that film, from what I saw of it, did that very much.
No, but it was still a well-made, well-informed documentary.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at it.
No, me neither. And so was that the end of the voting?
No, we actually had, we're getting close to the end here. We got 17% voted Joaquin Phoenix as being the biggest snub for her, and I imagine, Ryan, you're going to have something to say about that.
I agree with that very much.
I'm surprised that wasn't your vote, actually. I thought that was what you would have voted for.
I honestly, it was tough to pick one, but I really do think that Inside Llewyn Davis not even getting nominated for that 10th spot, which they left open, was just the biggest slap in the face. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm not sure it's a slap in the face. It's just the weird Byzantine rules of Oscar nominations, which are dumb.
Yes, they are. Byzantine and dumb.
And then we also had 13% for Monsters University as Best Animated Feature, which I'll agree is kind of surprising that it wasn't nominated, although I don't believe it is anywhere near the best of Pixar's work. So to me, at least, it wasn't that obvious of a nomination snub.
Right.
And then we had tied with 9%. You had your Best Actor of Tom Hanks and for Captain Phillips and Robert Redford, which actually I think are two fantastic performances. So I would agree with those. And actually, I voted for Robert Redford in All Is Lost as being the biggest snub of the year, because that movie, which we will get into later, I'm sure, but that movie to me is a fantastic film, carried completely by him and with no dialogue. I mean, well, very, 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 very little dialogue. For an actor to pull that off is absolutely incredible, and to not be recognized at all by the Academy is, to me, a huge snub.
Especially somebody like Robert Redford, who hasn't won, if I'm correct.
Never.
He hasn't won an Oscar, and he's getting along in years. He's making movies more rarely than he used to, so I'm surprised they didn't take this opportunity.
And yet
to
still
at least
choosing
nominate.
these risky choices for films. I mean, this could have been something that would have been like a complete end to his career if it would have failed, you know?
Right.
I love that in that film, it took a good hour at least for the 70-something-year-old Robert Redford to look less youthful than myself.
Right.
It's a little sad.
Right. So for the physical stamina alone.
That's damn.
Well, and he did most of his. Am I right? He did most of his own
Many.
stunts in
Well,
that.
you'd have
Yeah.
to in that movie. I mean, once you see it, did you see that?
I
don't
did
think you
not.
saw it. Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
sorry.
there's really not a good way to use a stunt double in a lot of those scenes. You know.
Yeah, if I'm picking my biggest snub for best actor, it's Redford, hands down. But I have to say, Nate, that I think that Ryan and I are more secure in our Llewyn Davis boat than Robert Redford. It's a little boat humor for you guys.
All right. Well, do we want to move then right into our snubs? Nate, why don't you start us off with your biggest snub of the year? Was it Robert Redford, or did you have something else that you, aside from what was listed in the poll?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the poll, that's what I chose, and I was trying to think of something that wasn't necessarily in the poll, and that also wasn't maybe as to those who follow movies and who follow the Academy as obvious as Inside Llewyn Davis, and something that's a little bit even more personal to me. And to me personally, when I look at the movies that I loved this year, I had my snub actually is for a Best Picture, and to me that is Terrence Malick's To the Wonder, which actually did not get a whole lot of attention, even though
It got barely any.
It got barely any,
Let alone from the Academy.
and I can see personally, I can see why maybe some are tiring of the Terrence Malick form a little bit. You know, maybe Tree of Life was all you needed of that. But I'm just a huge fan of his work. I love what he does with cinema, and I love the way that he uses everything that you can do with visual storytelling and messes with that form a little bit to create something absolutely beautiful. And I don't see To the Wonder as being any lesser of a work in his sort of very small canon of what he's done. And so to me, I kind of feel like To the Wonder was a movie I would have loved to at least seen an Oscar nomination for, because personally it was one of my favorites.
That's interesting. I loved Tree of Life, and I saw To the Wonder, and I think I need to see it again because I didn't love it, certainly not as much as you did. And for me, at that point when I saw it, the Malick stuff was wearing a little thin. Whether that is Malick or if it's just that he's had so many imitators the last couple of years. I think I saw the movie The Kings of Summer, and that was just, to me, like a very lazy and slightly pretentious attempt at Malick.
Sure.
Just like
And you see it all the time.
wandering outdoor shots and calling it, meaningful.
Oh, even this year, Ain't Them Bodies Saints came out, which had a very Malick feel to it, and I was not a fan of that film at all. I just think it's a larger testament to the fact that Malick is the one who does this, and there's not really any other person who comes anywhere close to what Malick's doing with this type of filmmaking.
Just last month, I took a walk through a field, and it was windy. And I was like, so derivative.
Yeah, nature really hasn't done anything new.
I know.
Recently.
When nature starts adding a voiceover narration, then I might pay attention. Right. I want to hear what you guys have to say, though. What were the biggest snubs?
Well, I'll let our guest go before me. Go ahead, Evan. What did you think?
If I have to pick just one snub, it would probably be the film Upstream Color.
Oh yeah,
from Shane Carruth. He made a big splash about 9 or 10 years ago with a great sci-fi flick called Primer.
right.
We can say it's a time travel
Yes.
flick.
Oh yeah, it's about time travel.
About time travel.
That's about all we can conclusively say about it, though. I think.
And really, I can conclusively say even less about Upstream Color. Did either of you see this one?
Yeah, I actually was able to see it at the Music Box in a double feature with Primer, and Shane Carruth was there.
Oh, that sounds Amazing.
It was amazing. And so
Was he able to explain either of those movies to you?
he wouldn't. He just kept, every time anybody asked a specific question about what something meant, he would start to answer it and then say, I can't, it's in there. It's in the movie. So, and I've seen Primer probably 6 times, and he's right. Whatever questions you have, they're in the movie. Yeah. I understand Primer a lot more now. Upstream Color, it's a movie that you kind of have to let wash over you. Yeah. And then you have to try to figure out what is actually happening.
I think it's one of those movies that you can describe as Malickian without finding it derivative. In no way would Terrence Malick ever make this film.
Not at all.
But it has that similar sort of almost angel observing nature feel to it. But the extra dose of weirdness.
It's just some country road. I was 6.
No, I was 6.
I told you that story.
No, you didn't. No.
Yeah, he held me under. You remember he held me underwater.
So I'm not.
And yet with
so
you,
I'm not
you
allowed.
have to
I'm
be
not
like
allowed to
this.
talk about my childhood.
Talk about you want, just don't talk about my
You think
childhood.
it's your
We're not talking
childhood?
about- What about the trampoline? With Mick?
Nope, that's you. That's yours.
That's me. Thank you for that. What about Reddy?
No.
Almost drowned me? You
No.
lied to my mom about it?
No, that's mine. That
That's
happened
you.
to me.
Right, okay.
That happened to me.
Chris.
And not only that, but you're also trying to tell me that
One thing that I thought was interesting, a viewer at the screening I saw, he didn't have a question. He just told Shane Carruth to listen, and he said, "This movie is Django Unchained, but instead of a slave going back to kill a slave master, it's people going back to kill God." And Shane Carruth thought that was a tremendously interesting reading of that movie. He creates these worlds that are fully formed before they ever get shot, and it really is a marvel at how well he can create this thing that you've never seen before. Now, I would have to agree with Upstream Color, but my choice for snub is actually one that I'm. The more I think about it, the more I'm shocked he didn't get it. I think Andrew Dice Clay in Blue Jasmine, he should have gotten nominated for Best Supporting Actor because he was fantastic in that movie. I didn't really know of Andrew Dice Clay as the Dice Man back in the 90s when he was doing his like nursery rhyme, whatever he did as a comedian. I only knew sort of the notorious Andrew Dice Clay, that he's difficult to work with, all this stuff. I thought he brought a real weight to the role that I would never have expected, because that character could have been played pretty broadly. Have you seen the movie, Evan?
I have.
You have.
I
We've
have.
all seen We've all seen Blue Jasmine. I think he could have played it really broadly, sort of a.
You mean like everybody else in that movie?
All right, I guess we're going to get back to that
Yep.
with the best actress. But you know what I'm saying? He could have been just some dumb construction sort of Brooklyn guy, but he really played it with a lot of heart, and I never would have expected. But he's a guy that you really root for, because deep down he's a good guy, and I thought it was a really nuanced performance, which subtlety and comedy are often overlooked by the Academy. So in a way, I'm not surprised, but they usually do like to nominate or reward a comeback like this Andrew Dice Clay thing, whether or not it is actually a comeback, and we're going to see him in a lot more movies.
Don't call
it a comeback. He's been here for years, but I was very impressed, and when I heard that he was in it, I was skeptical.
Sure,
but I think he did a great job, and I think he should have been rewarded for that.
Do you think that he had to play that part? Do you think someone else could have done just as good of a job? I mean, what I'm wondering is if you're saying it's a snub because you didn't expect that of Andrew Dice Clay,
Yeah,
and
that's
then he actually pulled it off, as opposed to this actually being a part that was a very difficult part for anyone to play, and this person actually took it to a new level, even though they're always a great actor. You know,
I think it was a difficult part to play, the way he played it. To be sympathetic and off-putting at once, I think is quite a feat. It's what in The Wrestler, what Mickey Rourke pulled off, that off-putting but sympathetic. I would compare the two performances. Whether or not somebody else could have played it, sure they could have, is part of my admiration for it. That he surprised me, yeah, but I do also just think it was a genuinely solid performance. Okay, so I'll start us off with Best Actress here. Now, since we were already talking about Blue Jasmine, I'm going to say will win. I think this is Cate Blanchett's to lose here. She's got a lot of momentum. Not to mention that I personally think that she was dynamite in the movie. Evan may disagree with me, but I thought she was gutsy to not shy away from Jasmine's prickly edges. Kind of like the Andrew Dice Clay character, Jasmine's thoroughly unlikable, but she's not cartoonishly likable, I don't think. Evan, what's your assessment there?
The least I have to complain about that movie is her performance. She's the only thing I like about that movie.
That's great.
No, I also like Andrew Dice Clay. Everything else about that movie.
Wait, we need more of a.
It's not just a guttural noise.
You'll get more.
This isn't a Simpsons script. Okay. Now, I think Blanchett causes us to sympathize with Jasmine, but she never asks us to forgive her. She never tries to make an apology, but we do sympathize with her. She's never let off the hook.
I want to go back to school. I want to get my degree and become, something substantial. I can't just do some mindless job. I was forced to take a job selling shoes on Madison Avenue. Oh, so humiliating. Friends I'd had at dinner parties, our apartment came in and I waited on them. I mean, do you have any idea what that's like? No, 1 minute you're hosting women and the next you're measuring their shoe size and fitting them.
I think if she doesn't win, it'll be some strange thing that has to do with this controversy surrounding Woody Allen right now. I think that could sort of stymie her chances if voters were put off by what's been happening with him and Dylan Farrow and things. I think that if it's not Blanchett, I think it's Amy Adams in American Hustle.
So is Kate your should win as well?
That's what I'm about to say. I think my should win is Cate Blanchett and Amy Adams. I think they both
some sort of
sure a tie. Maybe a tie, like back when who was it? Katharine Hepburn and Barbara Streisand won in the same year. But I think Amy Adams. I've already talked about Cate Blanchett, so I'll talk about Amy Adams a little bit. I think that her performance in American Hustle was really great. It's something we haven't totally seen from her before. It was combining the comedic talents that I saw in Enchanted and The Muppets with the dramatic talents that she's shown in every other movie. Whenever she was trying not to cry in American Hustle, it broke my heart. Like, I don't know if anybody acts like they're trying not to cry better than Amy Adams. And I thought her accent was hilarious because it is so inconsistent and it goes in and out from posh English to American to lowbrow English. And nobody around her notices. And I think that's a huge joke in the movie that I thought was hilarious. That she's not that good at conning necessarily, but people believe her for whatever reason.
Right.
And
it's because she's Amy Adams.
Because it's Amy Adams, and there was plunging necklines that were distracting everybody.
Is there an
Oscar
for decolletage?
There should be. So for me, Amy Adams, she really walked a fine line that was between over-the-top comedy and melodrama, and I think she walked the line perfectly well, and sometimes went over the top with the comedy where it warranted, and sometimes went melodrama where the character called for it. So if Amy Adams wins, I'll be very excited. If Cate Blanchett wins, I won't be surprised, and I'll be just as satisfied.
Yeah, I think I'll go ahead and go. My will win. I'm going to say it's probably going to be Cate Blanchett, and I really liked the movie Blue Jasmine, and I thought her performance was what you needed to have a very strong performance if you were going to buy into that movie at all. And so I thought she pulled it off, and I connected with that movie right away. And I think that she's who should win. So I think it's going to be Cate Blanchett. The only person, I don't think Amy Adams is going to win this category. I just don't think it's her movie to win. I think that she'll probably win eventually. She's such an amazing actress, but I just don't know if this is the right movie for her to win. And I don't know that I think that momentum is for Kate Blanchett, and if not her, I would actually probably think that Judi Dench might win before. And I saw Philomena, and
That might be why you're saying that. I think you're the only one of us that has seen it.
Okay.
I saw Philomena.
Oh,
You did see it?
I liked it.
I liked it too. I thought it was a really good movie, and she was good. I think that it's not maybe. It's an interesting character, but it's a little bit more one-dimensional than what Kate Blanchett's is.
For me, it was serviceable because it's Judi Dench and she did what she needed to do,
Right.
but the character does not stand out like Jasmine,
Right.
Or whatever Amy Adams.
So I wouldn't
character's
necessarily,
name is.
I wouldn't necessarily say that Judi Dench should win, but I do think that if it's not Kate Blanchett, it's probably going to be Judi Dench.
Evan, what are your thoughts?
You guys stole most of my thunder. I'm
sorry.
My will win is Kate Blanchett. I think she's the clearest bet. Your argument for why Amy Adams should tie with Kate Blanchett is my reason for why Amy Adams should beat Kate Blanchett.
Anybody think Sandra Bullock has a shot? I know we haven't said it, and if we did, we would have. But what about that one? Gravity's a big hit. Sandra Bullock's America's darling.
I just, I was not that big of a fan of Gravity, so I mean, it was okay. It was an okay film, and
More on that later.
More on that later, sure. But I just don't. I don't see it. She did a good job. I mean, she basically was most of that movie, aside from a few scenes here and there, and she held it together. It was fine, but I just don't compare. It's more or less compared to the rest of what's out there. I just don't see it this year.
Well, I think everything that I wouldn't be upset if she won because her performance is my favorite Sandra Bullock performance to date. Everything that's wrong with that movie and with that, what you would say, that character at least, is in the script.
Yeah, it's not.
And she did everything she could with the material.
I thought she did a great job. None of us have mentioned Meryl Streep. I think she was nominated. They just used old ballots.
Just like,
to save paper
did Meryl
and
Streep
left
do
Meryl
a movie
Streep's
this
name
year?
on it. Yeah,
Then I think we need to
Meryl
nominate
Streep
her.
burped near a camera, so they nominated her.
Yeah.
So moving on to Best Actor, I guess I'll start again. I think we'll win. Matthew McConaughey's got this locked up.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that's.
I don't
think we need to keep talking about it. I actually haven't seen Dallas Buyers Club. You do not need to see every movie to know who's going to win, especially in this category. If Matthew McConaughey doesn't, Evan saw it. I was not speaking for the group. I didn't mean to speak for the group. I'm saying that there are some cases where you don't need to know anything about anything to know that Matthew McConaughey is going to win this. So I guess we all think Matthew McConaughey. So more interesting then will be the should win of the nominated actors. I'm honestly kind of split between, without having seen 12 Years a Slave or Nebraska, I guess I have to say I'm split between Christian Bale and Leonardo DiCaprio. But that being said, I did like both performances. I thought, oh gosh. Here we go. I just got to tape my fists up before I put the gloves on.
You're arguing about, which is better, Kraft Singles or Safeway American cheese, without ever having tried the 10-year aged cheddar that is Chiwetel Ejiofor.
So I will then make my case for Christian Bale and or Leonardo DiCaprio. I think they both showed us something that we have not seen before. When Christian Bale won the Oscar for The Fighter, he said that his performance, which was pretty out there, pretty broad, only worked on screen because he had the solid core that Mark Wahlberg's character provided, that he kept it grounded. I think in this movie, Christian Bale keeps the rest of the cast grounded. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening in American Hustle, and Christian Bale, I think against type, holds it together by being understated. And I think that understatedness makes all the reveals of that movie a lot more effective.
And also delivering a few comedic chops that I don't feel like I've really seen from Christian Bale, maybe since maybe American Psycho, sort of. I don't know if you could even consider that. But
you're getting a little power drunk. Richard, you want to tell him anything? You want to wake him up?
Oh, no, I said we shouldn't do any of it, Irving. You know I said that. So now I support Richie. He's got vision. Do it heavy or don't do it.
What does that mean? I mean, he's the one ruining America, not me.
How the f*** am I ruining America?
Because people just got over Watergate and Vietnam, all right? And you're going to shit all over politicians again? Just because you want to be a big shot, get a promotion.
No, I'm thinking big. All right, this is going to be fantastic. We're doing video surveillance. I'm doing this from the feet up.
You will never do it properly because you got too much government attitude to be small and sleek. I'm like the Viet Cong, man, all right? I'm in and I'm out. I was there the whole time. You don't know it, all right? That's an art of becoming somebody who people can pin their beliefs and their dreams on.
I liked American Hustle a lot. The biggest problem I think I had with the whole movie was Christian Bale.
Wow. Go ahead.
I didn't feel like there was you felt like there was this solid core to the movie. I felt there was a mediocre Robert De Niro impression.
I can see that
going on there.
Okay.
And
in the accent, I can see that.
Yeah, and I don't know. I've never been a huge Christian Bale fan. He's always seemed to me to be a go big or go home actor. And even with this, he was supposed to be the solid core, but he was just too big. He was too ostentatious for even being your central protagonist, I guess you'd say.
Interesting.
Do you have a good, like, what would be a good, what was a scene that really kind of irked you or that you thought, I mean, can you give, I'm having a hard time getting a good example here.
Yeah, all
I
you're saying
can't
is
because
no
I
to
found
RES.
him fairly unmemorable instead of just being like, oh, he's sort of doing a De Niro impression. That's the thing. Like, if I'm going to pick out a scene from that movie, my favorite scenes didn't even have him in it.
Really?
Except unless maybe the science oven scene where Jennifer Lawrence is yelling at him. That's a great scene. He has nothing to do with why that scene is good.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, I would
yes,
say,
he
yeah.
does. Because he's that core that's keeping that scene from flying out of control. It works because, like, it goes out of control, but the out of controlness of it works. Because
like
there
any
is something
actor
that
could
we
have
can
done that
feel
role.
grounded. I do not agree with you.
All right. When do we fight about Leonardo DiCaprio?
Well,
I think
I
we
guess
should do
we
it
can
right
do it
now,
now.
because that's who I think
Actually,
should
no.
Go ahead, Nate.
Go ahead, Nate. Yeah.
Now, I'm also sort of prefacing this by saying I did not see Nebraska, I did not see 12 Years a Slave, so I can't speak to those. But I do think that my should win based on that is I think Leonardo DiCaprio as in The Wolf of Wall Street is great, and you know he's been nominated. What is this? His like fifth time being nominated for?
Like
I mean,
he's been nominated quite a
yeah,
bit.
and I don't know that he necessarily deserved it any of those other times, but I really think this is the one that for me was finally Leonardo DiCaprio giving me something that I could kind of look past him being Leonardo DiCaprio. There's so many memorable scenes to me in Wolf of Wall Street, and they basically all center around Leonardo DiCaprio. And you're talking about well, we don't want to give any spoilers here, but there's a sort of some of the sort of speeches that he gives in the office are just you know you're glued to him the whole time.
One
Whole
speech,
time?
Whole
Really?
time,
The whole
absolutely.
time.
You
Whole
were
time.
the whole time.
The
I was
whole
glued the
time.
whole
The
time.
whole like 30 minutes of that speech.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I will not even. Yes, absolutely.
Now here's
took
the
like two
thing.
naps
Here's the
during
thing.
that speech.
Here's the thing, Evan. We're talking right now about Leonardo DiCaprio's performance, not Martin Scorsese or the editor's decision to make the scenes long. I think that during the performance, whether it was over long or not,
I don't think it was
I
over
think
long.
he was
I
riveting.
think it was absolutely. I don't have a single problem with that scene.
specifically the speech that he gives, where there is a shift in his mindset.
Oh, okay. You're talking not the Steve Madden speech, but the other.
No,
really
not the
long
Steve Madden speech.
That's right, guys. Two really, really long speeches.
Both equally vital. I think that speech where he has the change of heart is one of the greatest things I've seen this year in acting. He works tremendously well to go from where he starts, and we see it. We see it all in his face and in his eyes. There is no other shift. The music doesn't change. Nothing changes except for Leonardo DiCaprio's face, his movements.
And it's fixed on him. You know, it is fixed on him the whole time.
carries it.
He has to pull that scene off.
And he does.
And I think he totally does. I did not think until maybe afterwards did it even occur to me that was a pretty long scene. Afterwards, I was like, oh, I guess that was kind of a long scene, but I was with it the entire time, and I
agree.
had no problem with it whatsoever.
And
He was really, really good, and he'd again be the thing I'd complain the least about from that movie. Sort of, he's the Kate Blanchett of that movie. He's really good. Almost everything else surrounding him in that movie
oh gosh,
rubbed me in many wrong ways.
let's have Evan back to talk about.
There was a lot
some
of rubbing in that
specific
movie, but-
movies. There's a ton of rubbing. All right. Well then, Evan, you've weighed in on both of ours. What's your should win for best actor?
As the only person who's seen The Will Win, again, performance-wise, I have very little to complain about. McConaughey was great in that movie. In a year or 2 years of great Matthew McConaughey performances, that is maybe the greatest.
Really?
It's up there. It is
That's
very,
awesome.
very good. There's a lot of things in the movie surrounding it. There's some problems with just the whole standard trope of someone from the in-group coming to save some minority groups. Problem, this is a straight man saving, gay people from
Lending
AIDS.
a hand.
But he is very good. I won't be mad if he wins. But Chiwetel Ejiofor is hands down. I've been a fan of him for like a decade, since
he's been great.
basically since Serenity. And he's just he gives a performance that is that sort of centeredness that you were talking about, you getting from Christian Bale. That he has this centeredness that
To a much
literally-
bigger cast, right? In 12 Years a Slave?
It's a bigger cast,
Farther
but it's
reaching.
his story much more than American Hustle is Christian Bale's story. And so much of what plays, because of the position that he's in, because he is a slave, so much has to play silently through his body, through his face, through the way he sings a song.
Roll, Jordan, roll. Roll, Jordan, roll. My soul arise in heaven, Lord, for you and Jordan roll. Everybody say, roll, Jordan, roll. Roll, Jordan, roll. My soul arise in heaven, Lord, for the year when Jordan roll. Roll, Jordan, roll. Roll, Jordan, roll. My soul arise.
In the course of singing this song at a funeral, you just see in the way he's singing, in his face, in his eyes, you see this whole shift in his character.
All right, moving on to Best Director. I've got will win Alfonso Cuarón. For me, like Matthew McConaughey, this one seems like a lock. He's been winning everything: Directors Guild, Golden Globe, BAFTA, Critics Awards. I think it's Alfonso Cuarón's to lose. What do you guys think?
You know what? I actually chose Will Win as David O. Russell just because I think the picture was a lot more about the performances and the actors, and I think that a lot of people were paying attention to how good David O. Russell is at directing actors. And if that seems to be the way that they vote, I could see it being David O. Russell who wins.
Okay.
David O. Russell is really the best part. He got some amazing performances out of his actors, save one. And I'll agree, it's Alfonso Cuarón's
You're agreeing with Ryan?
to lose. Yes.
Okay.
With Ryan. I would never agree with you, Nick.
I don't blame you.
In your face.
But who should win? I know, again, I'm the only one who's seen it. Steve McQueen for 12 Years a Slave. That guy is just... That movie makes you look at slavery, and he does the same thing with his camera. Horrible, terrible, awful things happen where you want to look away, and the camera doesn't let you.
I think he's got a really unique voice and unique perspective, and to give him even a broader audience, I'd be all for it. But I think Alfonso Cuarón is sort of my should win as well. I think that Gravity is the first movie I've seen in a long time where I have no idea how he made it. He was inventing technology and techniques as he made it, and the transitions from what's actual footage to CGI is flawless, and I have no idea how he did it with those long shots that are clearly all shot in camera to something that's just completely CGI and back again. I thought it was technically a real feat of directing, and I think that he deserves to win it this year.
I would agree with you, aside from I feel like there should be some demerit for the script problems.
I would agree with that, actually.
That you have to put on him because he also at least co-wrote the film with his son. My biggest problem with the movie is the unnecessary tragic backstory saddled on Sandra Bullock's character.
Yeah.
I feel like it feels so writerly. When I was watching the movie, I was completely immersed until all of a sudden it's like, oh, they need to give some character motivation. When I feel like not dying in the cold recesses of space is all the motivation you need.
How little did they think of the audience? Like, listen, nobody's going to care if this lady dies. She's got to have something that's keeping her fighting.
And honestly, this is one of the few times I agree that getting your biggest movie stars ever to star in your movie, you don't need to give them backstory, because I don't want to see George Clooney and Sandra Bullock die.
To me, actually, there's a lot of correlation in the story and in what they're trying to tell between Gravity and All Is Lost. That these are you're talking about the two scariest places to get lost in: outer space or in the middle of the ocean by yourself. And I feel like with All Is Lost, it made all the right decisions that Gravity made wrong. There was no backstory at all in All Is Lost. At all. You don't even know the guy's name. You don't need to know his name. You don't know anything. You need to know why he's even out there in the first place. They could have done that with Gravity, and I think I would have loved that movie a whole lot more. I agree with Evan. I think you have to fault Alfonso Cuarón a little bit for that, because you can't. To me, I don't think you don't deserve a Best Director Oscar solely based on technicality or technical skill and directing. I don't know if you would agree that James Cameron should have won for Avatar, or did he win? I don't even know if he did.
That was Catherine Bigelow.
Right,
She should have won.
She should have won.
She should have won.
But as far as like at the time, talking about things that were groundbreaking with film and what you could do with film, you could have made an argument for James Cameron, and I don't think he should have won, and he didn't. But I'm saying that that same argument could also translate to Alfonso Cuarón. He's doing some amazing stuff, don't get me wrong. And the one thing I did love about Gravity was actually seeing it in the theater. It was fully immersed. It was an absolutely incredible experience.
That's the thing. That's what I'm saying. He made it in a way that you had to see it in 3D. You had to see it the way he made it. And that is not true of other directors. Yeah, if you could, 3D IMAX. And this is the first time I've ever seen a movie where critics across the board were saying, if you can see it 3D IMAX, see it 3D IMAX.
Sure.
He made his movie so perfectly that way that you had to see it that way. I don't think that you can fault him for the script as a director. I think you can fault it for him as a screenwriter and say he doesn't deserve to win screenplay. But I think that what he did from a directing point of view, and I don't think we disagreed on how good Sandra Bullock's performance was, which we've said before, actors don't direct themselves unless, of course, they are directing themselves. But he got really good performances out of George Clooney and Sandra Bullock. The backstory thing, I will admit, was a little bit of a crutch, but I think that in general the movie works on a very broad level that talks about the fear of not wanting to die alone in the cold recesses of space. That's a pretty universal feeling, and I think that it leans more heavily on that than it does on her backstory. All right, so let's move on to the big one, Best Picture. I think this one's the toughest call. For me, I think it's between 12 Years a Slave and Gravity. As the will win. The will win. I haven't seen 12 Years a Slave, so I can't speak to that. As the will win, 12 Years a Slave's been winning a lot. And I think it's got, if I can be cynical for a second, it's got the message that people like rewarding.
That slavery is bad?
Yeah. That very simple, whether it's a simple message or not, it's got a message.
Yeah.
And that gets rewarded often. Like we just said, Hurt Locker beat Avatar. Gravity was a big hit, commercially and critically. It was well reviewed. I can see that being rewarded, but for me, 12 Years a Slave is going to take it as the will win. What do you guys think?
I'm with you. It's going to take it as the will win, and it, as the only one here that's seen it, seriously, guys, do your homework. It should win.
Well, to me, I thought it was a toss-up. I'm going to go a little bit of a different direction. I think it's a toss-up between Gravity and American Hustle. I think if you look at something like like Argo winning last year, you've got sort of a precedent for sometimes that the Academy will choose the movie that maybe isn't the bigger, sort of deeper, heavier film. They're actually choosing something else that's a little bit more lighter, entertaining.
Argo is a light film?
In comparison, I think...
No. Argo's a message movie. Argo's a message movie, too. American Hustle has no message. Argo has a message. That message is Hollywood saves the world. There was no chance that the Academy wasn't going to recognize Argo. It was political. It was about the Iran conflict back in the day, using it to comment on it today. The message was clear to me, and it was a super, Hollywood saves the day.
But I don't know if that's why it
I don't
won.
think American Hustle has any sort of message like that.
I mean,
what I'm saying is I think that Argo was chosen because it was the fun movie.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
You didn't have fun watching Argo? That's all I had watching Argo.
I mean, I wouldn't say fun. I don't know.
Entertaining?
It was like sort of edge of your seat. It was It was entertaining.
It was,
okay.
I mean, it was basically like to me, yeah, you could look into.
You're
Gravity,
saying it's fun the same way American
It's a
Hustle.
heist movie.
Yeah, that's what I'm
They're
saying.
just
yeah.
heisting people.
Heisting hostages.
Yeah, they're heisting
from a
hostages
real life
out of-
situation of a
It's Ocean's
religious
11
state.
with people.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about Argo for a second. As a means of talking about why I'm arguing for the American Hustle or Gravity winning Best Picture. What were the nominees last year?
Last year, the nominees were Argo, Amour, Beasts of the Southern Wild, Django Unchained, Les Mis, Life of Pi, Lincoln, Silver Linings Playbook, and Zero Dark 30.
Okay. Now, I feel like the choice was for Argo because it was the most broadly seen, the most the critics and audiences liked it. Okay, and it was. I mean, you think it's a message movie. To me, it was basically a thriller heist movie. And I understand that the message was in there. The message was in there. I'm not going to lie. But the point is, I think that that's why it won, was basically because it had a very broad appeal and it really wasn't going to offend anybody. And not that 12 Years a Slave is going to offend anybody necessarily unless you really love slavery.
Certainly not Hollywood voters. I mean,
but I think it's been a while since a really, really heavy film like that has won Best Picture. And also one that hasn't, I mean, I know there's screeners that go out, but not that many people have seen that movie. American Hustle to me and Gravity seem like movies that I could see the Academy voting for just because they don't want to vote for the heavy film. They want to vote for the one that was a little bit more fun to watch, that more people have seen. And that was just overall a lot more people just tended to like it.
you could say that the broadly seen most appealing. If you're going to say that, then you got to say Gravity, because Gravity made $700 million worldwide. And we've got in the past, the year before Argo, it was The Artist, which was very much
the same deal.
Yeah, I will agree with you on that.
A lighter film.
But again, that
guys, remember when we talked about Shakespeare in Love a couple minutes ago?
That was Harvey Weinstein. Actually, that's a really important thing. That The Artist was also a Weinstein movie.
It was pretty feel good.
So the only Weinstein movie is Philomena. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first, probably.
Philomena wins Best Picture.
Best Picture.
We can just stop the podcast
before The Artist, King's Speech, a Weinstein movie.
Another
before
one that had broad appeal. I just think American Hustle is one that's got a lot going for it because people tended to have a lot of fun watching it. It had great performances.
I liked American Hustle. That's not what I'm arguing.
We're not arguing about the movies. We're arguing about who we
I don't think that it's got enough traction to win right now. And I don't know if we're ever going to reconcile on that. So if I could, I would like to share my should win. My should win for Best Picture is Her. I absolutely love that movie. I have to say, without seeing 12 Years a Slave, Her was, for me, the best movie of the year, if not the best movie of the last couple of years. Yeah. I thought it was flawless. The concept is perfect, and the concept is perfectly executed, because the movie is not about the concept. Joaquin Phoenix, Amy Adams, Scarlett Johansson, everybody else in the cast, Olivia Wilde, they're incredible. All thanks to, I think, Spike Jonze' direction and his script. The music by Owen Pallett and Arcade Fire, which was nominated, one of the things that I will give props to the Academy for. I think that's going to be one of those things that's going to be imitated for years to come, just like John Bryan's music in Eternal Sunshine and Punch Drunk Love. That's been really imitated all over the place. I think you're going to hear the same sort of soundtrack. I think it's going to prove itself to be a very influential and a very sort of benchmark film in a lot of different ways. So for me, I think Her is the movie of the year. Nate, what about you?
I haven't seen Her, and I haven't seen 12 Years a Slave, and I haven't seen Nebraska. So with that said...
Did you see any movies this year, Nate?
Of what I've seen, I do think... and we
in fairness... Your wife gave birth to twins, so that kind of...
I'm actually surprised I've seen as much as I have, to be honest. Of the movies I've seen, I think what should win is Wolf of Wall Street. And I think it's a movie that I think we will be talking about for a long time. I think that it's a movie that, I enjoyed myself with American Hustle. Gravity was a-okay. But with A Wolf of Wall Street, not only was I surprisingly, now I went into that movie not thinking I was going to like it, and surprisingly, I was hooked for the entire almost 3 hours. And I think that it doesn't give you easy answers.
Feels like 5.
But it does not give you easy answers. It gives you plenty to chew on after you've watched it. And I've listened to a lot of critics go back and forth on this movie, and to me, that a lot of times is a sign of a movie that is a good movie that's going to beg for more discussion as the time goes on and as people rewatch it. And I think time will tell how it holds up. But I think to me, Scorsese kind of does it again and creates a film that is on one level controversial to some people, and on another level is going to, even for those who don't find it all that controversial, give them plenty to think about and talk about.
It's interesting. I feel like I'm siding a little bit with Evan here because you've named it the best picture of the year, because I can't quite give you that, but I do really enjoy Wolf of Wall Street. But Evan, that long sigh made me think that
leaned back from the microphone
to say.
in the middle of that sigh, just so it didn't go on quite
He's
as long
still sighing,
as
actually.
both of those Jordan Belfort speeches in the middle of that movie. I don't know. That movie was one of the most gratuitous movies I've ever seen, and I'm not even talking about the nudity.
I know.
I know.
It was just
everything was gratuitous, and that was the point.
And I understand that was the point. And I know that that's what Scorsese was planning, that he wanted you to eventually be sick of naked supermodels. That it to be so much drunken, drug-fueled, orgiastic, just sex that
I don't even think it's that easy.
Halfway through,
I think there are some people who will watch that movie and will not get sickened by that.
Yeah.
Oh no,
I think
there are some, but I'm saying,
and I think that's to his credit that he doesn't tell you how to feel about that,
Absolutely.
and just basically hammers you down with it. And it's interesting that I think that movie in some ways tells you more about the viewers than it does about the movie itself. It's almost like it's almost just this sort of mirror that you put up to against yourself. How repulsed are you by this film? Are you not at all? Are you completely repulsed? And to me, there's so many things that Scorsese could have done to make it maybe even more of a message film.
Yeah.
And he never even goes close to that.
And I appreciate that
It's
it's not a
certainly
message
subtler
film,
than a war
but
of attrition.
I'm not sure what it says about me, but I was just bored by that film. I was just bored.
That says something, I think, about the state that America is in, with its disillusionment with the establishment, with the financial powers, with all that stuff, that you can watch that movie and be like, yeah. I think that's part of the message, is that if you aren't shocked by it, you should be shocked by how not shocked you are.
I don't know. I feel like 5 years from now, that's going to be minor Scorsese. I feel like that's going to be maybe even like sub Gangs of New York, minor Scorsese.
Wow. That might be, you've just touched a nerve with Nate, because you like
I really
Gangs
love
of New York.
Gangs of New York.
I think you're right that it is going to be. It certainly has not established itself, which is why I find myself siding with you against Nate, saying it's not Best Picture of the Year. But I've got to side with Nate against you in the merit of the movie. And I think we could honestly record another podcast with Evan just about The Wolf of Wall Street.
Please don't make me talk about Wolf of Wall Street. It's like watching Wolf of Wall Street again.
And you would have to watch it again. If
Yep, you would have to.
No.
Evan will be back to talk about The Wolf of Wall Street at some point. And then I think we're going to have you back to talk about Blue Jasmine as well. But that's about all we've got. If you guys have more to say about your Oscar predictions, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. Our handle is @CWSBF, which is just the first letters in Can We Still Be Friends? I'm guessing if you searched Can We Still Be Friends, you would find us on Twitter. You can also call us on our Google Voice number and leave us a message if you've got a real good rant, agreeing or disagreeing. Our number is 847-306-9532. We'd love to hear from you guys. Next time, our movie will be Gladiator. This is a movie that Nate will be defending and I will be offending. At the end of March, we've got Darren Aronofsky's movie Noah, starring Russell Crowe. So we've decided to pick a Russell Crowe movie that is a source of contention. So if you guys have something to say about that, find the poll that will be up on canwestillbefriends.net.
Tell us if you're a fan of Gladiator, if you're not a fan, or if you were just okay with it. That'll be up on our website, canwestillbefriends.net, for the next at least a week or two.
Gladiator, were you not entertained?
There you go. That's our preview from Evan. Evan, thanks for coming out tonight.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Toodles.